And we're back for another InvestorKit podcast session. And once in a while, I tend to bring on a good friend, client of ours who's been through the journey working at InvestorKit, or with InvestorKit, should I say, as their buyer's agency. And today's story is very, very special because today's not just about the first purchase, the second, the third, and someone kind of getting that one step after each time. This is about building a truly prolific property portfolio. So in this particular episode, we're talking to Aman, who's a really, really valued client of ours, and he's actually built a $10 million portfolio working closely with our team. So the journey started back in 2019, and from that time, we had tailored a really specific plan that was unique to Aman's preferences and his goals and what made sense for his portfolio. Found certain properties with some unique factors to it, so please do tune in to find these key things out. But secondly, also Aman goes into the journey that most people want to really avoid the conversation on, which is how do you look at the serviceability aspect, and how do you also look at the actual scaling of it during times where lending's not easy. And the truth is, it's not easy, and there are decisions personally and from a business perspective that people need to make as they really start to aim for some huge goals in property portfolio building. And this is what Aman's done, and he shares more about it. And you'll learn more about some of the things that maybe people are also wondering, like, hey, with regards to this, how quick was this journey? I said 2019, so you can kind of see where he started in 2019 and how much he had at that time versus where we're at today, which is a $10 million portfolio. So there's lots to unpack here, going through the story and the journey of one of our valued clients and showing you how we can put together with the right strategy, the right research, and scale a property portfolio. Now, Aman is a founder of a business, and that is JICS, JICS, and he runs a migration agency and also a career growth agency as well when it comes to migrants and so forth looking to start or grow their careers here in Australia. So he does some inspirational things in terms of setting the path for them, showing his own success and what's possible when you come to Australia, grow here, grow a career, grow a business, start investing in yourself, investing in your family. This is truly the land of opportunity. And so Aman's proven that himself, and no doubt he's setting up many others for success through his migration agency and also his employment and career agency. So, hey, follow Aman Sethi, AMAN SETHI on LinkedIn, an absolute gentleman. And if you're in that pathway of learning more about the migration and even just the career and employment growth, there's no one better to speak to. But let's tune in to this episode and hear from Aman on the scaling of his $10 million portfolio, working closely with InvestorKit now for the last 4 years. Let's see how we went. Hey, Aman, it's great to have you on the InvestorKit podcast, mate. And thank you so much, firstly, for putting time aside to hang out with me and get into interrogation and chat up mode and everything about the portfolio you built, which is awesome. So, mate, just wanted to say thank you first for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Arjun. Always happy to chat, as you know, and yeah, glad to be here.
Well, mate, I guess when I break down the portfolio that we've done in terms of building it out together, it's always good for the listeners to go back to the journey of where it all started. And I guess, I've got my version of that, which I shared in the intro. But I think when it comes to going back to 2018, 2019, we first started to connect around that time. I guess, firstly, what's going through your mind on this journey of what a portfolio looks like to you? Because it clearly wasn't one when you first started. And then from that, what was it that inspired you to go, I want to do this, and I want to start this journey of building out an investment property portfolio?
Yeah, look, initially when we started, we always had a plan to build a property portfolio. What that looked like specifically, we didn't have, very tangible numbers or goals at that point in time. We were just on. I've always seen property as a vehicle to, building long-term stability and growth. And so I knew that, when I was ready and we were in a position that we were settled and had the the means and the capability to start building a portfolio, that I wanted to take that step. And that's when, we reached out to you. And initially, obviously, we didn't have a clear plan, but, talking to you, going through the different options, we obviously, over that period of time, over the 1 to 2 to 3 years, we were able to then, get clearer and more specific on our plans as time went on. And also having that initial chat with you gave us an overall direction as to where we want to go and where we want to take it as well, which was really fantastic.
Yeah, I think what you've elaborated on there is that people don't have to come into the journey of trying to build a portfolio having figured everything out. I think the main thing is you'd figured out that property investing will play a core part in the wealth building. Getting started versus not getting started is clear benefits to that. And then the third thing was equipping yourself with professionals. On that professional journey, obviously, this wasn't your first property when you'd purchased or joined the journey with us. You'd had a couple of properties or a property before starting the journey. What was it that made you realize, you know what? I could go at this alone. I have the financial resources to do so, but I want to get someone involved. I want to build a team around me. What was the first thing that made that thought come to mind?
My personal belief is that it's always good to let the professionals do what they do best. And from that perspective, and also I always had a view that buying in New South Wales, where we live in Sydney, was not really something that was going to allow me to build a larger sustainable portfolio. And as a result, I knew that I would have to go interstate, whether that's Queensland or South Australia or any other location. And for me to do that again, I needed someone to assist with that process, because us flying across every weekend, or doing that, plus then teaching myself how the whole property market works, that's going to take time and effort, right? It might take me 6 months or 12 months of serious effort to kind of get even to a half decent level. And ultimately, I look at it this way, right? So if you have someone that purchases hundreds and thousands of properties over a period of time, and you have someone who's, say, purchasing their first ever property, who is the more likely to get a better outcome, right? And it's and for me, the answer is simple. And that's my thought process in terms of why I'm always happy to pay a professional for their expertise. And that's why we decided to engage with you, which was the thinking at that time, basically.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I guess on this journey, you're starting to now move from one property to two, and you were just absolute action taker throughout all the years. And these years that we were working together, there was pandemic that hit the shores, there was lockdowns in businesses and personal lives, there was money becoming cheaper, money becoming more expensive. Everything that you could think of was happening over these few years. Yet you went from one to two to three, all the way up to 8 properties on this journey, right? And so from this journey, you look at it, what made you feel like, no, the world is going in all sorts of directions, money, thoughts, media, I'm going to keep going? What was it internally that made you feel like we're going to keep going here?
I think the confidence that we got after the first purchase was a big factor in that journey. So you obviously helped us with the Adelaide property, which was our first purchase. And the fact that we then understood the process, we had a lot more knowledge. You were able to share obviously fantastic insights, and from that we got the confidence to say that yes, this is good, it's working, the financials make sense, we're getting the results that we want, so now let's multiply it, essentially. And so from that perspective, we've always been of the belief that we were going to buy when we could afford to buy, essentially. And regardless of what's happening in the world, or not what's happening. Yes, during the pandemic, like when it first happened, of course, 2 or 3 months, we were also a bit cautious, and we did put pause for 2 or 3 months, and then but quickly we realized that the property market was not really getting negatively impacted, and all the signs were pointing in a positive direction. And then we decided to then press the go button again within those 2 or 3 months, essentially, after that.
Do you feel that, I mean, you've raised a really important point here, and I think there's a couple of bullet points I took from there. The first is, if the first one goes right, how much confidence does that bring you? And this is where we actually, unfortunately, have to play fixer upper on more portfolios than we do starting it right. And I
Yeah.
imagine just how many people out there who start a portfolio, then go, oh, I want to get a buyer's agent on my team now. they must have had such, and they do have such a high level of paralysis for years following a first investment that doesn't go so well. And what you've
Yes.
done there is gone, well, I want these first batch of investments to go well, because if they do, they'll encourage moves ahead. And that was one thing I sensed there. But the second one is you realized the most important point in property investing, and I tell this to many people, is buy when you can afford to, and not buy when all the tea leaves and all the gurus come together and say every condition is perfect, there's no cloud in the sky, nothing. Because when you afford to, is going to unlock all the metrics for you, because there's risk management when you can afford to for cash and bank. There's cash flow management when you can afford to be able to hold assets. And then when you can borrow, and then naturally when you've got the team around you to take action. When you can afford to does not simply mean, for those tuning in, just because I've got a little bit of money in the bank. It's measuring across these four areas. Am I equipped to? Do I have the capacity to? Do I have the cash flow to? And then do I have the money to risk protect? And that's something I found you put that to a science to. Every time it was like, I tick these four boxes. The bank said yes. Arjun's here with me and the team's here with me. I've got the money in safety. I feel okay. I can then also cover the repayments that go up and down. I'm ready to go. And that was something I learned about you. Do you feel that came from somewhere, Aman? Was there something in life that gave you that, whether it be in business or personal endeavors or family dynamics? Because that's not traditional. This doesn't sit with everyone in their mindset. Where do you feel that's been ingrained in within you?
So in terms of I guess risk aversion, so it's hard to pinpoint specifically, but I would say I think with experience, like when I was young and carefree, obviously you take risks and you learn that where you get to a stage in your life where you understand that yes, it's important to take risks to get ahead, right? There's risk in everything that you do in life, obviously, but it's about mitigating those risks for me. And so I've always looked at it from a what's the worst case scenario, essentially. And if and so I always like to have the buffers in place, and this is what I tell anyone who asks me as well, that having that worst case scenario and the buffers in place is very important, because things are not always rosy, right? Things will go haywire at some stage, and you should always be mentally prepared that if it goes haywire, this is my backup plan, or this is my get out clause. And if you don't have that clause, then then you're opening yourself a little bit. And so again, and this is something I think is very individualistic. So for me, I've always had a higher risk appetite than say most of the people in my network, for example, and so for me, it's like I'm comfortable sleeping in that sense. Whereas other people that I know or in my network might not have that risk appetite, right? So ultimately, they should think about personally what's going to help them be successful, but also them have the peace of mind as well. And that's what I tell most of my friends who ask me about these topics, basically.
What I could always sense, mate, about you is calculated risk. And that's the thing, right? Because higher
Yeah.
risk tolerance doesn't usually come from being more of a cowboy. Higher risk tolerance usually comes from knowing what the worst case looks like, being more analytical in that worst case, and then naturally it's more calculated risk, right? So, very, very good point
Correct.
you've raised in your risk tolerance. Now, the actual buying journey. We know this happened quickly, but there was something unique about your journey. And this is where I talk about the importance of tailoring properties to an individual and their strategy, not just buying a one size fits all. Now, we have a traditional strategy investor kit, which was the traditional approach, and then we mold it where we need to, which is foundation assets, momentum assets, and passive assets. And if you're tuning in and you're first time hearing these tunes, foundation assets were major markets with good size volume deals. By volume, I mean purchase price. And we're trying to create an anchor. And by having these anchors, we have a little bit larger compounding wealth dollars when we're in the market. And also from these perspectives, there's comfort, there's safety, there's also that feel good too. But then we don't try stick too long here, because most also get the serviceability caps. Most also need a little bit less dollars to go in a deal so they can do it with frequency. We move to momentum deals. Momentum deals are affordable all across the nation, any market, everywhere where the data says so. And then passive markets are commercials and unit blocks. Now, you decided, hey, Arjun, strategy makes sense, but I'd like to nail my foundations more extensively and longer and stay in that market a bit more. What made you feel more comfortable with that? Because your properties are very unique. And by unique, I mean each of them carry an X factor, whether it be the suburb they're in or whether it be the type of house finish within that suburb. this allowed some pretty crazy results. But I'd like to hear it from you as to why you decided, no, let's stick in the foundation longer, stay in there for more assets as part of the tailoring for you, Aman.
Yeah. So again, I think it comes back to the fact that we always wanted to build a significant portfolio. And like you said, the foundation assets are like the base of that portfolio, essentially. So my thinking was that, the bigger the base, the more then we can grow and then, capitalize on that later on. And, we're at the journey now where, we've got obviously the foundation assets are in place. We're waiting for a couple more years for them to, do the rental increases, the further capital growth, and then we'll be in a position to then say move into other types like commercial properties or unit blocks like you mentioned. And so we're at that phase, we're waiting on that. But I was always of the belief that buying or building a strong base or a larger base is going to help us then with those further purchases down the track. And I think that's something that we did in terms of being unique or having some X factor. So I think from that point of view, it was something that I was probably looking at from a rental yield point of view. Like, we always wanted to get assets that have a strong rental yield, so our monthly out of pocket earnings, or you could say, or a monthly budget that we have to contribute to the property is minimized as much as possible. And that's very correct. So I was always looking at it from a point of view of what is the rental trajectory as well, and as well as the capital growth, of course. So yeah, that's probably the reason why I tended to go towards those assets.
Yeah, there's something in this X factor piece I want to highlight to everyone, because we might not be able to visualize these properties, right? When we purchased a couple of properties, there's this yield curve concept I believe in, and this is something that people need to realize. There's like a bit of a up and down that happens. In that sort of 300 to 600k, yields tend to be really high. And then what happens is in the 600k to a mil, not all, but most properties tend to drop off on the yield. And then you get to around that 900 mil and to about 1.5, you get select properties with certain X factors in select markets. Very word select was used multiple times, where you get the yields that come back again. You're like, holy crap, where did this come from? Usually when I'm at 1.5 mil, 1.7 mil in, say, Sydney's Northwest, you're only going to get 700 to 800 in rent. And so suddenly those yields just aren't there. But we'd found a sweet spot where even at 800k up to about 1.4, $1.3 million purchases, we were getting $900 to $1,100 in rent in some cases, which allowed the yields to be there. Now, someone might say, but Arjun, why don't you chop that up into 400k houses? What people forget is they should do net calculations. 400k houses is also 3 sets of council bills, 3 sets of water rates, 3 sets of vacancies, 3 sets of kitchens, bathrooms, roofs to manage, air cons to manage, and also 3 sets of domain advertising payments and real estate advertising payments too. So when you actually break it down, yes, you may have a higher yield percentage, but the variances are very small. And so then personality can come in. And if you're like, I don't really want to have 3 extra houses to get the same dollars, and I don't have to do 3 extra loan applications, 3 extra refinances, 3 extra valuations, which could go left, right, or here. This is something many people forget. And that's why when you are playing in the 800K to 1.5 mil prices for people tuning in, it's important to actually find these little X factors so you can creep up the yields, not to 5% levels like you did in the 400K properties, but to respectable levels that are higher than the norm. So I just wanted to call that out for people who are wondering, well, Arjun, why did you guys just keep buying $1 million properties? Well, there is a science behind it if your position accommodates it. And this is the next question for you, Aman. The position accommodating it. You have been an absolute champion in what you do in your business around helping migrants find their sweet spot in Australia, but then also employment and people's careers, getting the right employment from your business, as well as also getting the right growth in employment. I have harped on about something in investing that many people don't like talking about. People always just talk about, and I think it may be the more conservative parts of Australia, which is normal, right? But everyone just talks about strategies. Everyone just talks about borrowing capacity hacks. Everyone just tries to find the bank that will give them money at all cost, or the trust structure, or this. People don't take accountability to talk about themselves, their career growth, their income growth, their happiness in work, and their ability for the work to flow into life, and finding the career that gives them that opportunity. You've been a shining beacon of light there, where you've gone, in my career in CBA, or my career in business, my career in businesses, you've continued to see that growth in income. Could you maybe give us a bit of a home story, a behind the scenes story, more about what are the things you believe in that have played a part in your income growth, your career growth, your business growth, that are habits that people can take away? Because I'm 100% sure without that, we're not creating the $10 million portfolio that you have, which I'm grateful to be played a part of it supporting you. But the truth is, you're the foundation creator as a family and to build this together, you and Charu. Could you talk to us about the behind the scenes of what tips that you might have for people on the career side?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So as you know, Arjun, so we basically have been running the business for just under 7 years now. So and we focus on job search coaching and guidance towards a lot of the migrant population, a lot of international students as well once they graduate, and a lot of new migrants who come here on their permanent residency. And also we're managing immigration services and processes, as you know, across PR pathways, partner visas, family visas, the whole remit essentially. So in terms of some of the philosophies behind how we've grown that, and what's been the driving factor towards us getting that traction and that success. So one motto that I have is about creating win-win scenarios, and that I always feel that that's something that's been a core of our business, that if we can create a scenario that yes, we are providing quality, we are providing service, but the client is also getting a tangible outcome that they can see is of high quality and service. And so that's probably the main factor, that I always try and create win-win scenarios in all situations, whether that be with our client dealings or whether that be in purchasing property or in other business related deals. And I feel that as long as that happens and everyone walks away and has that real value add that they can see, then naturally think good things will follow. From our business perspective, like, we've basically grown the business organically through word of mouth for the last 6.5 years, and now as we're kind of expanding a bit more, we're obviously taking on some bigger and bolder initiatives as well. But the reason it's kind of all grown word of mouth is because the value that we provide to people resonates with them, and then they refer 5 friends or 10 friends, and then it goes from there. So yeah, it's all about, I think, creating those win-win scenarios, providing value and providing quality that people will appreciate, and naturally, if you do the right things, then the results should follow essentially.
Yeah, win-win scenarios, man. It's a great summary there. It reminds me of, I guess, the opposite of that is those who have victim mentality. Do you know what I mean? Which is like, oh, I did this, but that didn't happen, or I want this, but I'm not getting that, or I want this and they're not doing that for me. Whereas you're constantly wide, and even in the negotiations of the property, you're like, well, if I want this, Arjun, what about if we give them this? Like, there was always this kind of creating the win-win, which you've always been really savvy on. So mate, thank you so much for sharing some of these tips. What you've done in building the portfolio out with your partner Chara, you guys bringing this together to an almost $10 million portfolio across the nation, diversified across multiple states. I have one final question for you. Buyers agents, they're obviously not cheap, and we've done it multiple times, which means it continues to get more and more expensive for you. Yet you continue to come back and use it. And I know you gave us an analogy and importance of professionals in the start of this conversation, and how they've helped you and they started the journey in terms of what we've done. But when you come to summarize our journey together, and what makes you so confident now to go not just once, but Arjun twice, now 6 times together and more, and your friends and close family, which I'm forever grateful for, what do you feel are the top X factors that keep making you feel comfortable in that way?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, look, again, one is, and I think this is something big for most people, is the trust factor, right? Essentially. So once you go on that journey, so initially, I'll give you an example. So when we first started, obviously we did the usual thing. We reached out to 4 or 5 buyers agents, and see who was the person that we felt most comfortable with, and straight away Investikit was the clear winner for me. I mean, there was just there was no comparison at that time, and so straight away I felt that confidence initially going through, and then obviously we built that trust, and it's kind of just flowed from there, and I think once the relationship is there, that trust is there, and then obviously we want to capitalize on that trust essentially, because that's something that's critical, and that's something that is not easily attained always in business relationships essentially. So in terms of the cost versus benefit analysis, so for me, I've always broken it down in terms of, look, if you're, for example, buying $1 million asset, and someone comes to you and says, well, to get the best out of this $1 million asset, or make sure that you don't make a mistake that's going to handicap you for many years to come, that you have to pay a certain small percentage of that to a professional who's going to then maximize the chances of success, essentially. So I always look at it from that perspective, that it's always going to be a case of yes, you are spending money on a buyer's agent, but then the buyer's agent, the value that they're bringing, the expertise that they're bringing, the experience that they're bringing, at the end of the day, the value that they're providing is going to far outweigh the money that you're paying them, essentially. And I've always looked at it from that perspective myself.
Look, appreciate the kind words there, Aman, and the trust in us throughout the journey. Most importantly, hats off to you on the portfolio you've built. And I think to leave everyone on a final note tuning into this is you are now displaying the importance of a fast acquisition period, a condensed window, building out the base of portfolio, because this is now when the power of compounding wealth kicks in. Many people forget that the harder is, yes, the building of a portfolio, but once you start getting momentum, it actually gets easier. And the reason why I say that is that at $10 million of assets, 5% lower than long-term averages occurring 1 year across the portfolio is 500K in wealth gain. And you ask any business owner, no matter how successful, or any senior corporate professional in big four banks or big four industries or any environment, have you ever made 500K while falling asleep? And most will say that I haven't, or most will say that making 500K in any capacity, business or personal, is very difficult. And so this is where you went down a journey, you started it, you took lots of action, you engaged a team around you, and you never looked back with the right calculated risk and risk tolerance. Mate, not only are many people listening to this going to be inspired by you guys and what you've done and how you think, more importantly, but also the future generations, from your kids to your kids' kids. This only gets sweeter as time goes on. So, mate, hats off to you guys, and congrats on the journey today.
Our pleasure, Arjun, and thank you so much. And I know I've said this to you privately before, but I think 100% without you being there on our journey with us, like, we would never have got to where we are as well. So we really appreciate that in all aspects, and thank you so much from that perspective, as I've mentioned to you before as well, many times as well.
Thanks, Aman. And for more interviews like this, tune in to the Investigate YouTube channel. Jump on, like, subscribe, and get notified on future videos like this. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in.